first, when residents of a street in Warrington, Cheshire, started to receive letters addressed to someone else, they assumed it was a mistake. But when they realised their neighbours were getting the same kind of mystery mail, things started to feel a lot more sinister.
I have to say it's an amazing story, not least because it was all about bank accounts that the residents had absolutely no idea about. Unable to work out what was going on, they got in touch with us and we put on our very best sleuthing hats on the case.
What's transpired is a mystery that even Miss Marple would struggle to untangle, but it leaves one of the biggest names in banking with some big questions to answer.
On this quiet suburban street in Cheshire, all appears well.
Nice quiet place, great neighbours, just a nice place to live really.
But in January 2025, after 22 years of living here, Paul Harrison started receiving some very mysterious mail.
It all began when the first letter arrived from HSBC. The letter clearly had a bank card in it, so we decided we'd open the letter to see exactly what it was.
Upon closer inspection, Paul realised that although the letter had his address on it, the name was not his. It was addressed to somebody neither Paul nor his wife had ever heard of.
I took it back into the HSBC branch, handed it over to a member of staff, told them what had happened, and they just said, put it back in the envelope and return to sender.
That's exactly what Paul did. But a few days later, another similar letter dropped on his doorstep. Certain that someone was using his address to commit fraud, he once again reported the letter to HSBC, hoping that somebody would look into it. But you know, nothing changed.
I kept getting in touch, and after 2 or 3 conversations, which were pretty much exactly the same as the first one, I started believing it'd never get sorted out. The more it goes on, the more frustrated and the more angry you find yourself getting that you can't get through to somebody.
Finally, 2 months after he received the first letter, Paul managed to speak to somebody in HSBC's fraud department who said the account would be blocked, and Paul would get an update in the next couple of weeks.
After that conversation, I felt like the situation was resolved, and then more letters came to the unknown man, and the whole situation started again, and nobody's really taken it seriously.
Paul says the update he was promised never came, but HSBC seemed rather busy communicating with the mystery man it thought was living at Paul's house. He's even been sent 7 letters, a bank card, PIN number, warnings about exceeding his overdraft limit, and a worrying warning that the outstanding debt could be referred to a credit reference agency. But while none of this was aimed at Paul, he is concerned about the impact they might have on him.
I do worry the effect that this could have in the future, whether that be for me personally or for whoever comes to buy this property in future. If that person needs to take credit after they bought this property, it could cause issues for them in future.
And after chatting with next-door neighbour Tracy Heaton, it became clear that his house wasn't the only one on the street to be receiving the same unwelcome correspondence. In Tracy's case, the letters were addressed to 2 different unknown men.
I initially thought there's a fraud going on here, and I decided I'd have to let them know that they are being defrauded in some way.
Tracy called HSBC, but after an hour on the phone, she says she was left unimpressed with the bank's response.
I felt that I was fobbed off. They questioned who else could be using my letterbox, as if it was my fault that the letters were coming to me. I was very concerned about the implications on myself and credit rating, and they just weren't taking it seriously. That upset me.
After making a complaint, the bank launched an investigation, but so far, like Paul, Tracy says the issue has not been resolved.
I have received now 8 letters, and despite contacting them repeatedly to tell them that these people are not at my address, they're nothing to do with my address, I am still receiving letters from HSBC Bank for these people that do not live here and have never lived here. I just think it's totally wrong, and the bank are just not taking the appropriate action to stop it.
Frustrated at the bank's response, Tracy and Paul started chatting to other neighbours. And they discovered it wasn't just their addresses being used to create the dodgy accounts. In desperation, Paul got in touch with us, and we realised that it sounded eerily similar to a story previously covered by our colleague, reporter Shari Val. who works for BBC Radio 4's You and Yours. Shari discovered how scammers had been opening business bank accounts using genuine, unrelated addresses to access overdrafts worth thousands of pounds, which were then used for money laundering. When we told her about Paul and Tracy Street, she instantly understood the link.
As far as we can tell from the Warrington accounts, they don't seem to be linked with limited companies. But this willingness to set up bank accounts to launder money through is actually moving from business accounts now into personal accounts.
So Shari hot-footed it to Warrington to find out more.
So Paul and Tracy, they reckon there are about 6 houses that have had these HSBC letters with these accounts set up, and Tracy has got 2 of these accounts set up in her house. So I'm going to go up and down the road and see how many more I can find. So you've had these letters from HSBC. What did they say?
I think they were inquiring about a certain bank account, asking me to confirm details.
So you actually thought, because I don't bank with HSBC, this is a scam?
Yes, definitely.
And just down the road,
That's a fairly hefty
weighty
envelope.
the package this neighbour received contains an HSBC welcome pack.
Your new telephone banking security number. Oh,
Yeah.
and PIN numbers.
Oh, yeah. There's a card somewhere which I cut up.
While some neighbours know nothing about the bank accounts.
That's a no from that one.
As she knocks on more doors, it's becoming clear to Shari the scale of the fraud that's taking place.
When was the most recent one you received?
Yesterday, then.
But you got one yesterday.
Yes, and we were rather confused on who it was because we've lived here 68 years and we thought we've never known anyone of that name.
And while some of the residents have brushed the letters aside, they've caused concern for others.
I was shocked, actually. I thought I was being scammed or my identity was being stolen and the address used for fraud. But I don't really know.
3.5 hours after Shari hit the streets,
So I've finished the investigation in this street, and it's amazing. 12 houses have HSBC bank accounts set up in other people's names at the addresses. I think that's incredible. And what it does is ask serious questions about how this has been allowed to happen.
But that's not the only question raised by all of this. In the weeks since filming, Shari's been in search of answers, and I'm very pleased to say that she's joining me now in HQ with the latest news. Whoa, what a story. And I'm very pleased to say that Shari is with us now, along with our fraud expert, Aaron Shohan. So I'm tempted to say, what the heck is going on?
That's a really good question. What we think is going on here is money laundering. Now, what criminals want when they steal money is they need to get it out as soon as they possibly can. And moving large chunks of money is difficult because everybody's watching. So what they do is they set up loads and loads and loads of bank accounts, and they can fracture the money in lots of small amounts. So they set up bank accounts and the money goes in, the money goes out of those bank accounts, and then nobody can
Bingo,
find
they've
it.
got it.
And it happens very quickly.
Yeah.
It can happen in a matter of seconds.
And with these accounts, you know, who do these identities belong to? Like, for example, are they real people?
It's very possible and most likely that they are real people. The names are Hungarian names, and they're all quite common Hungarian names, so it's difficult to pinpoint them. And then you think, well, how on earth are these identities being used? And there's 2 ways it can happen. Either the identities are being stolen, and these people know nothing about this, or they're being bought. So that people are being offered what I believe to be £250, because that's what the overdraft limit was on the accounts, if they'll allow their identities to be used to open bank accounts.
So they just go for the cash?
They just go for the cash.
It's an amazing story, isn't it, Aaron? And I want to come to the point of, you see, my head says, how on earth could HSBC have opened all of these accounts?
Absolutely, it's going to be a red flag. I mean, it's so frustrating because it just seems so obvious. The challenge for the bank is joining the dots. That's what they're not doing. So now banks have really sophisticated processes. They have technology which helps them check identities of individuals and details of their address and make sure they match to open. So somehow the criminals are winning in this situation. They're bypassing those controls. The failing here is twofold. One, how is it the bank are not picking up on the connection of all of these addresses being used at the same time? But also, I think the banks can do much better on the response and take these reports seriously. That's what I think we're frustrated about, is that the bank hasn't taken this report seriously. And I think the other thing that the banks need to really think about is what are the consequences they're causing for people here by allowing this to kind of stretch out and accounts to be opened.
One of the main concerns Shari heard from residents in Warrington was that their credit rating could be affected by fraudulent banking activity at their address. The good news is that's not the case, since a credit rating is linked to an individual rather than an address. But Aaron says that addresses linked to fraud can still raise financial red flags, which may lead to caution from banks on future lending decisions.
So, Aaron, it brings us to the whole point of what can any of us do to actually protect ourselves and our homes, our addresses, our details?
Well, the first thing is, as we've seen from the story, if you get something odd from the post from a bank which is not your bank, addressed to somebody else at your address, in my view, I would open that. I would take the great advice of dialing 159, speak to the fraud department and let them know. Keep a record of everything you do. Keep a copy, send it by recorded delivery. If you want to be really careful, you can go to an organisation called CIFAS, C-I-F-A-S, and get something called protective registration. It costs about £30, but it tells people that your identity might have been compromised for use of fraudulent credit.
And final advice from you, Sharon?
So the Home Office says it's illegal to open people's post if it's not addressed to you. So I've looked up the Postal Services Act 2000. It's very short. I'll read it to you. It says, a person commits an offence if intending to act to a person's detriment and without reasonable excuse, he opens a postal packet which he knows or reasonably suspects has been incorrectly delivered to him. So what that means is that if you've got a really good excuse and you don't intend to do anybody harm, you're absolutely fine to open the mail. Because if you have a bank card that's delivered to your address and is not addressed to you, you have a reasonable excuse. And in my view, you should open the post as quickly as you possibly can and then get in touch with the bank.
Well, I promise you, if we hear from some of our lovely viewers about other streets that might be vulnerable, we'll be back to you both. But for the moment, thank you very much, Anita. That was really interesting.
Thanks.
When we spoke to HSBC, it told us it carries out multiple physical and digital checks when an account application is received, and that there are valid reasons why a cluster of applications may be made, such as a new housing development, or student or worker halls of residence opening up, or if an account opening campaign has taken place in a particular area. HSBC said that when fraudulent activity is reported or suspected, it always aims to investigate and then take appropriate action in a timely manner. HSBC apologised to both Paul and Tracy that its response to their reports was not up to the standard customers should expect, adding that it's reviewed what's happened and taken action to ensure that it doesn't happen again. The bank urged anyone who receives a letter from HSBC addressed to someone who does not live there to return it via post or take it to their local branch or banking hub. And it confirmed that the Warrington accounts have all now been closed. Well, this is an issue we're certainly going to keep an eye on. So whatever the bank, if you receive mail that suggests someone has used your address to open accounts or take out credit, then as well as reporting it to the bank, do drop us a line as well. That's riffofbritain@bbc.co.uk.